Hello everyone, welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff that's mostly pretty good and maybe one of the best movies of all time, or I review stuff that's absolute garbage and should remain in the depths of hell. Now, this movie that I'm reviewing today, certainly not a bad one, and this is not only a great film in general, but this is also going to be my first Western movie that I'm going to be reviewing for the channel, and I couldn't have chosen a better pick. Today, as you guys can tell by the title and the thumbnail, today I'm reviewing the 1993 classic Tombstone. Released in 1993, starring Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth, Michael Biehn, and Michael Rooker, and many more. Now, I just want to state this very clear. I've always admired the Western genre, but I never really seen the Western, like any real Westerns. Really the only one I've really seen were some of Clint Eastwood's outings in the mid 70s, like with High Plains Drifter and Outlaw Josie Wales. So and those were years ago. So this was the first one I have seen in a long time, and I've heard multiple people say that this is a great movie. Like you could check out so many interviews or so many reviews on YouTube saying that this is a classic western. And honestly, I have to, like I said, I 100% agree with this. Um, Now, I get that this is actually a true story, and um there's multiple videos that I've gone over not only the movie itself, but also the history of Tombstone and the Earp brothers. In short term, I'm not gonna cover the whole like inaccuracies between the movie and what actually happened. If you guys want to figure out that sort of thing, look up Tombstone review on YouTube, and that will probably pop up. Sorry, and but also I will be putting two videos down in the description below. One is a full blown review, um, where they just talk about the movie in general, but also talk about little inaccuracies in between. The second one would be a full in-depth retrospective of the history of Tombstone and how accurately this movie is. Um, and they are from the channels Off the Shelf Reviews and History Buffs, respectively. So after this review, go and check out those videos in the links in the description below. But anyway, enough of me rambling on. Let's get to my review of Tombstone. So Tombstone was released on December 24th of 1993 with a budget of $25 million. Domestically, it made over $56 million. Worldwide, um, as I researched, so far worldwide box office has not been confirmed yet, but it has been deemed a success. And this was directed by George P. Cosmatos, who, if you guys may remember in a few earlier episodes of season 2, of this series, you guys may remember that George P. Cosmatos also directed Rambo First Blood Part 2, where as I saw that as a kind of like a generic action movie of the 80s. Now, unlike this film, where I don't see it as a generic action movie, I see it as one of the greatest, like I said, westerns, but also one of the greatest movies and greatest action movies of all time. Now, I thought that it was kind of ironic that this film was funded by, if you check on the back of the Blu-ray, actually I don't even know if it will. Oh yeah, right here. Yeah. So right there, you guys see that? Actually, yeah, that is. I'm gonna pull it up on my camera right here. It's gonna appear a little bit blurry, but that logo right there, that's for Hollywood Pictures. Now, you guys may remember Hollywood Pictures from a certain movie I did last week, and that movie was Super Mario Brothers. So I don't know how they went, and they were both released the exact same year. So ironically, I think Super Mario Brothers came out first, because this film was released the day before Christmas in 1993. Um, and I believe the Super Mario Brothers movie came out in like May, so I guess they wanted to make a quick movie to kind of get some cash back from the failure of Super Mario Brothers. And they certainly did with this movie because this, like I said, this movie was a success. Um, but really, let's go over the plot. So Wyatt Earp, played by Kurt motherfucking Russell, and his two brothers, Morgan Earp, played by the late Bill Paxton, and Virgil Earp, played by Sam Elliott, have left their gunslinger ways behind them to settle down and start a business in the town of Tombstone, Arizona. While they aren't looking for any trouble, trouble soon finds them when they become targets of the ruthless cowboy gang. Now together with Wyatt's best friend Doc Holliday, played by the fantastic Val Kilmer, the brothers pick up their guns one more time to restore order in a lawless town. This sounds like a generic plot for any Western movie where this town is filled with greed or there's, chaos going on and the new strangers pop up uh, into town and deal with the mess. But obviously, with the historical focus point of the town being Tombstone, and obviously with the Earp brothers, Doc Holliday, and the Cowboys, along with other characters that I'll mention. It just feels like, you know, um, there's a lot more to the story than any other generic Western. Um, but yeah, let's go over the the cast, sorry. So first off, we have Kurt motherfucking Russell as Wyatt Earp. Now, if you guys are a fan of this channel, I have actually talked about a previous Kurt Russell movie, um, and that was The Thing. Um, but also, like I said in that review, like, um, Kurt Russell obviously starring in obviously The Thing, but also, Escape from New York, also Escape from L.A., Soldier, Big Trouble in Little China, Elvis, Captain Ron, all of these great films from the 80s that he has starred in are just pretty much seamless. And some of his 90s work that's kind of obscure, like we said, Soldier, and even Breakdown, which is actually a film that I'm surprised that no one really talks about anymore. But it's really a shame. Um, we have Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer, who 2 years later would go on to do Heat along with Batman Forever. Um, he does a great performance as Doc Holliday. And I know that whenever people talk about this movie, there's always a debate whether or like who the true hero of the film is. It's either Kurt Russell or Val Kilmer. For me personally, I would honestly have to actually go for Kurt Russell in this movie. I know I still love Val Kilmer in the role of Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday is his role. But I just think that the central focus being on Wyatt Earp is just a little, just pushes Wyatt Earp just a little bit higher than Doc Holliday for me personally. Um, and um, we also have Sam Elliott as Virgil Earp, as I said already. He would uh, he would also star in another favorite film of mine that also doesn't really get talked about a bunch, certainly more than um, some other films I talked about on this channel, and that is Roadhouse. Which unfortunately I don't have the Blu-ray because for some reason the shot select version of the film has unfortunately gone out of print. So I will be trying to get that at some point. Um, we also have, like I said, Bill Paxton. Obviously, uh, obviously starring, before in um, playing as a thug in the first Terminator movie, while also being Hudson from Aliens. Um, but yeah, and he does great for in his performance as well, even though he really only pops up or is in the movie for not even like half of the film, which I'll get to later. But we also have Michael Biehn as Johnny Ringo, who would again also be in Aliens, but also would be in Alien 3, uh, and the first two Terminator movies. Well, the first one really. He's only in the second one in the special edition version. Um, but really, it's that the special edition version is really the main one that people watch nowadays. Um, and yeah, he does a great performance as Johnny Ringo. Um, we have Powers Booth as William William Brocky. I probably butchered that. Who is it's honestly kind of a flip flop between Johnny Ringo, or like between Michael Biehn and Powers Booth as like the main villain of the film. Um, really, it's only Michael Biehn that appears throughout the whole movie, but I'll get to that when I get to my favorite scenes. Um, we also have Stephen Lang as Ike Clanton, um, who is like one of the cowboys. Um, we have Michael Rooker as Sherman McMasters, who's again another cowboy, but he actually kind of sees like what the Cowboys are doing. He's like, well, I don't really like this, so I'm just gonna switch over to Wyatt. And then something happens to him later on, which I'll get to later. We have Billy Zane as Mr. Fazbin or Mr. Fazbin. Um, and he's great as usual. Even though he really in this film he's only like a cameo. We have uh, Dana Delana or Dana Delane as Josephine, or full name as Josephine Marcus, who becomes like the new love interest for Wyatt. Um, we have Thomas Hayden Church from Spider-Man 3, of all things, as Billy Clanton, who is the brother of Ike Clanton. And finally, we have Tenney as Sheriff John Beeham, or oh yeah, Beeham. Um, some people say Beeham, other people say Beheim. So I say Beeham because that's what they say in the movie. Um, and there's obviously other cowboys and stuff like that, but honestly, those are the main central characters. Uh, I can mention the wives, like especially Maddie. I'll get a little bit more into her character later on when I get to my favorite scenes. Um, which I have a boat ton. Um, but yeah. Um, but yeah, like everyone in this film from the central cast does great in their performances. Um, we also have well, actually, um, might as well talk about my favorite scenes because I have a boat ton. Um, and also we'll get to the fun fact and the score, and then my eventual rating. Um, but yeah, it really does seem like this is like the best ensemble cast of any film because we have so many big list actors or actors you'll recognize from other films. You know, like I said, we have Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Bill Paxton, Sam Elliott, Michael Biehn, Powers Booth, Michael Rooker, Billy Zane. Like this is like the like in my personal opinion, probably the one of the best ensemble casts. Also going along with like the Outsiders, with such cast members as Patrick Swayze, Ralph Macchio, and like Tom Cruise, like a very young Tom Cruise before before his big role in Top Gun, and Risky Business as well. Um, and like I guess to really um I like the fact that um some people have complained about certain films in like the 90s and stuff like that, where the town in like the towns and westerns look too much like a set. um where I honestly would compare Tombstone set to Back to the Future 3. um Not that there's anything wrong with Back to the Future Part 3. I still think it's, a great film. It's just the problem with that film is that, with that film, the town kind of just looks like a town, like, that was made on a set. Um, because obviously they had to kind of make it a Western town, but also put up these certain, um, like, certain homages to, like, the actual town of Hill Valley, like the clock tower still like is being slowly built, um, and obviously we don't have we don't ride on horses anymore. We drive cars and stuff like that. But it just really seemed like the the town, the western town in Back to the Future Part 3 really seemed like a set that was built for like the Universal, like like um uh sorry, that was my chair. Like the Universal like backlot tour. Um and then but Tombstone pulls off the town very perfectly, where it literally looks like a western town from like the 1800s. Um and it's just like, well, now whenever I watch Tombstone, it's like I'm thrown into that town, and I'm like, wow, I'm like in the western era. Whereas in Back to the Future Free, I'm like, okay, I'm in the movie version of a western town. It doesn't feel too believable. Um, but that's probably just me. Um, I really don't want to go over the inaccuracies, but I don't want to make this video too short, especially with um, especially how some of my previous reviews were over 40 minutes long. Especially my Thing review, which was over 50 minutes long. Um, but I guess to kind of mention some of the inaccuracies between the film and the actual real life events is obviously we have the OK Corral. The gunfight at the OK Corral, which is one of the most famous shootings in American history. Um, but there's certain things about that's kind of been changed, or yeah, that's changed for the movie. Um, and that's probably just because back then, in '93, when they're making the movie, they didn't have as much knowledge of Tombstone as we do now. But still, um, when you actually look up the history of Tombstone, this movie does seem like a very Hollywoodized version of the film, or like of the actual history. It feels like the romant. It feels like a romanticized version of the actual tale, and um, certain things about. Sorry about the yawning. I again like kind of like with previous reviews. I'm kind of filming this late at night. So that's why the camera's kind of a little bit crap right now, or the camera quality, I should say. But certain inaccuracies that I was able to actually, without even like looking up the history and being like, oh, okay, the certain inaccuracies that I could tell that was like, okay, that was actually changed for the movie, was like right before the OK Corral scene, there was like it was, the Earp brothers and Holiday, they're all walking to the OK Corral, and um, Sheriff Biehn comes up to them and he says, "It's okay, I've disarmed them." But in history, it's kind of muddled, a bit muffled, as to what he said. It was either he had disarmed them, um, 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 or he will disarm them. But grandly, if he did say if he had disarmed them, like obviously, what was the point of even going there? But um, you know, um, but when you actually go there, you see that like two of the cowboys are armed, and the other two have been disarmed already. Except Ike Clanton, who was thrown in jail previously. Um, but um, might as well go into, well, actually, a few more inaccuracies. Near the, actually, you know what? I'm gonna mention the inaccuracies. I mean, besides the one I've already mentioned, if there was a scene, with my favorite scenes, I'm gonna be mentioning the inaccuracies if a scene has them. Um, so first scene that I like is at the beginning of the film when Wyatt gets off of the train, and he's he's settling down the horse because the guy that was bringing the horses off them was being kind of like harassing the horses, like beating them, like with this like rope. And the Wyatt comes over just smacks him in the face. He's like, "It hurts, don't it?" And he sends him away. And then I think like the town marshal um comes up and he goes, "You Wyatt Earp?" And he goes, "Yeah." And well, I have a job for you. And immediately before even he finishes his sentence, Wyatt just goes, "I don't want the job." Um, and then one of my favorite lines in the whole movie is when the marshal goes, "I never once met a rich person with a okay. I never met a rich person with a guilty conscience." Um, and Wyatt goes, "I already have a guilty conscience. Might as well have the money as well." And it's just like, ooh, it's just like just punches right to the point, and it's badass. Um, and then that obviously leads to Wyatt meeting up with Virgil and Morgan along with their wives, and kind of taking that picture. And um, even when Morgan tries to talk, Wyatt's just like, "No, shut up. Just enjoy the moment." Um, my second favorite scene is when Wyatt goes into the saloon, which is basically has been filled up with bums, including Billy Bob Thornton. Uh, and there's a confrontation uh, between Kurt Russell and Billy Bob Thornton, where Kurt Russell just comes up and obviously Billy Bob Thornton is being Billy Bob Thornton. He's just getting pissed at over stupid crap, and he just turns over to Wyatt and goes, basically, he's like, "Is there something the matter?" He's like, and Wyatt's like, "Yeah, you're sitting in my chair." And he goes, "Is that a fact?" "It's a fact." And the scene goes on, and then Billy Bob Thornton is about to pull out his pistol. And he's like, "Go ahead, skin it. Skin that smoke, and I can see what happens." And you see that like the Billy Bob Thornton's like kind of terrified, but he wants to pull it, but he knows that if he does, he's dead. And then he just starts like punching him in the face, and he's like, "I said throw it down, boy." And he makes him bleed. He's like, and then apparently this is actually true in history, where um, Wyatt Earp grabbed this guy by the ear, twisting it, throwing him out of the bar, and saying that he can't come back. Like that's badass, and that it's cool that it's actually true. Um, and then obviously it leads to that final standoff between the Earp brothers and Billy Bob Thornton, and all you hear, Billy Bob Thornton comes around the corner with a shotgun, and you just hear, "Johnny, is that you?" And you just turn around, and there's Val Kilmer just sitting there. And by that point, and then Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer just start acting up, like about how they're best friends and stuff like that. And you could tell that Billy Bob Thornton is acting it so well that he looks like he's just shit himself. And then like when he's sent off, Kurt Russell says tells him to leave the shotgun, and he goes to give it to him, and he goes, "I told you to leave it," and he just sits on the ground and he just walks away, and it's like, oh, just it's so goddamn cool. Um, and then I think my next favorite scene, it would honestly just be the fight at the OK Corral, and that's like an hour into the movie, and this movie's like over 2 hours, I think. Yeah, 130 minutes. So yeah, that's over 2 hours. So within the first hour of the film, you have the OK Corral. Um, and then um, and I've already mentioned the kind of mystery about what the sheriff said to the Earp brothers, either that he had disarmed them or he will disarm them. Um, but again, if you guys want to learn more about the inaccuracies, there will be videos down in the description below. My fourth favorite scene would be would be probably the fight, but well, actually no, actually it would be the whole attack on the Earp brothers, where first up, Virgil gets his arm hacked up. You don't see by who, but you just know that it's probably the Cowboys, because he just walks back in, because he leaves the bar, or he leaves the saloon. I should say, and then you just hear something happen, and then you see Virgil walk through the door, and you see him kind of limping a bit, and you just see him turn around, and his whole arm is just like this whole arm is just like a blood. It's just a blood stain, and then he just collapses on the floor, and then you see Josephine run to the wives of the Earp brothers, and they get shot at, which did not have happen in history, but the attack on the actual brothers did. It's just the actual attack on the wives didn't happen. But anyway, so the attack on the wives didn't happen, but the next thing that happens, and the final thing that happens, is absolutely true. Where after Virgil got his arm hacked up, Morgan storms off to the saloon, or like to a different place to play pool, and as he hits the ball, you just hear, and someone shoots Morgan in the back. And like actually right before that, you get Michael Rooker and like two other guys on horseback saying, "We're with you." Um, like because Michael Rooker's character throws on the red slash, and he's like, "I'm with you," and then they ride off, and then you see Morgan trying to play pool, and then you just hear the gunshot, and he falls down, and they're trying to get the bullet out of his back, and then you just you obviously had lines earlier in the movie where you you listen to uh Wyatt and Morgan talking about what happens when you go up to heaven, and how you see like a bright light and a bright staircase. And then when Morgan is dying on the pool table, he goes, "You remember that thing I was saying about how you see the white light when you're dying?" Um, yeah, I don't see a goddamn thing. And then he passes away, and the sheer emotion on Kurt Russell's face when he realizes that Morgan is dead, and he just walks outside with the bloodied hands, and he's just telling everyone to get away from him, and he's just sitting there crying, and you just hear him yell Morgan, and then that's it for him. He is done, and he is pissed off, which leads him down on his revenge scheme to kill every single cowboy. Um, my fifth favorite scene would be um when Wyatt saves Virgil from two cowboys that come to kill him when he's trying to leave on the train, which is Ike Clanton and another cowboy. Um, uh, you just hear one of them go, "Hey Manny, where's Wyatt at?" And you just hear Wyatt go, "Right behind you, Stillwell." Stillwell just turns around and the bam with a double barrel shotgun, and then Virgil just peeks his head out of the window. And you get like the finger uh, like the point, and you just see Virgil wave with his hand, and you see Wyatt come up to Ike, and he just cuts his face with because obviously he has the shoes with like the things on the back, so he just cuts his face, and you get the explanation of him saying, if I see a red slash, I'm killing a man wearing it," and he shows the badge, and he's like, "Look at it now, bitch. It's illegal now for me to do this." And then he tells Ike to run because he he let him go during. Well, he didn't let him go. He just got him out of the fight at the OK Corral because he didn't have a gun. This time he let him go to tell the Cowboys, which is another favorite line of mine, where he just says, "You tell him that I'm coming and hell's coming with me. You hear me? Hell's coming with me." And I'm like, yes. And then you have and then that's like the second they leave him like they let him go like three different times throughout the whole movie. But anyway, that's the second time they let him go, and you just see a montage of them killing cowboys. And so the river scene where it's Powers Booth and a whole bunch of cowboys versus Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, what's his face again, Sherman McMasters, and like two other people on Wyatt's side. They're all fighting, like shooting at each other across this river, and then Wyatt just gets up, and apparently, according to history, this is true that Wyatt was dodging all of these bullets, like just veering like left and right, and just like moving his body just to avoid these bullets. And then Powers Booth just like, "No, stop, he's mine." He starts shooting him with his pistol. He runs out. He throws it back. He just goes, "You son of a bitch!" And you just get a close up of Wyatt going, "No!" And he just shoots him twice with a double barrel shotgun, and boom, Powers Booth is dead. Which, by the way, really quickly, I would know Powers Booth from Red Dawn and Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Which I do absolutely want to cover on both of them on future editions of Russell's Movie Reviews. And actually, I will be covering a martial art movie for next week's episode, which will be the finale to season 2. Which I will actually plug in a little hint or a sneak peek for for the season 2 finale of Russell's Movie Reviews. But anyway, and then they kill a whole bunch of other cowboys, and then they scram off. And then my final favorite scene is when Johnny Ringo calls out the Wyatt, saying well, not literally, but he sends one of the cowboys, because I believe it doesn't actually show in the movie, but apparently Michael Rooker's character went off because Johnny Ringo wanted to meet him and ask him to try and make him join back with the Cowboys. And then he's actually killed off because he says, no, like your ways are wrong. Like, why do you guys do this? And then they kill him off to basically send the message of Johnny Ringo wanting to challenge Wyatt to a duel. So Wyatt accepts, and then you just get this tree, like this tree area, and you just see Johnny Ringo just chilling there, and all of a sudden you see a silhouette just walking towards him. And you just hear Johnny Ringo go, "Whoa, I didn't think you had it in you." And you just hear Val Kilmer go, "I'm your Huckleberry." and you see Val Kilmer, like, or you see Doc Holliday walk out for basically his deathbed, where to kind of elaborate on this a bit, this whole blood for blood thing, because Val Kilmer says that, like, because Johnny Ringo is like, I didn't want you, I wanted Wyatt. Like, you have no part in this, and he goes, Doc Holliday goes, like, I beg to differ. You said blood to blood, remember? And he's like, I was just joking, and you just hear Val Kilmer go, I wasn't. And then they have the duel. And before I get to the duel, um, apparently, or in the earlier scene after the fight at the OK Corral, you see Johnny Ringo drunk as hell, walk up to the Earp brothers, and they challenging them. Like, he's like, I want your blood, I want your souls, give them both to me right now. And he's, Wyatt's like, I don't want to fight you. There's no money in it. I don't want to fight you. And they start walking away. He's like, don't you have the guts to pay for blood? And you just hear Doc Holliday go, I'm your Huckleberry. And, like, that kind of sets it up. And then Doc Holliday goes, say when? Say when? And then Johnny Ringo gets dragged off. And then so they always had this, like, thing. Like, this blood for blood thing. And it all comes down to this moment. And then you just see Doc Holliday just pull out the gun and poof, and he just whips it back. And he has his hands up like, come on! Come on! And, like, it looks like he grazed him, but, like, really, he just shoots him in his temple, his left temple. And you just see, John just staggering around. And you just see Val Kilmer like, come on! Come on! Which is freaking hilarious. And then, you just see, and according to history, they did find Johnny Ringo's corpse slumped out against a tree with a bullet hole on his left temper. Now, it hasn't been confirmed yet who actually, I believe, it hasn't been confirmed who killed Johnny Ringo. And so, obviously, in this film's case, they decided to make Doc Holliday have a duel with Johnny Ringo, and obviously have him kill Johnny Ringo. And then my final favorite scene is when Johnny's actually on his deathbed, and they're playing, and Wyatt visits him. And because Doc Holliday is suffering from an illness called tuberculosis throughout the whole movie. And that's why I mentioned earlier that he kind of rised up from his deathbed, because he had this illness that slowly got worse and worse throughout the movie until this scene right here, where he's actually dying, and they share one last poker game, and Doc just goes, like, at least remember me for the man, or like, he's like, I just want you to, like, know, like, you were, like, my best friend that I ever had, and I appreciate that, and go after that one actress that you fell in love with. And then Wyatt gives him that book, My Friend Doc Holliday, by Wyatt Earp, and that completes it for him. And then he passes away, and it's just like, oh, why do you gotta be so sad? And then he meets up with Josephine. It's, like, snowing outside, and and then you hear the narrator. I forgot what his name was. He pops up in the beginning about the history of Tombstone, and then he pops up at the end, talking about what happened after the events of Tombstone. Apparently, Ike Clanton was killed in a attempted 2 weeks after, in an attempted robbery. Maddie died from an opium overdose, which was basically a drug. Back then, she died from an overdose of that, and then, like, and apparently they went on to. Apparently, Wyatt and Josephine were married together for about 47 years, and then it mentions that Wyatt Earp died in Los Angeles in 1912, and it's just like, wow, this is very sad. And then the movie just ends, and it's like, well, god damn it, movie, why are you gonna leave me on such a sad note? But the movie overall, was a fun ride nonetheless, so that I'm not really complaining that much for ending on a kind of sad note. Um, and so really quickly to talk about fun fact. My fun fact is that after this film went through, I think supposedly 3 directors. So the original director for this film was going to be Kevin Jarre, and then he was fired, and then um, John Carpenter. Okay, this is my fun fact. So after the original director Kevin Jarre was fired, John Carpenter was slated to direct, uh, until the final director was hired. So yeah, and it would have been great for this film to be directed by John Carpenter, especially with Kurt Russell being there, and like with the movies I showed you earlier, like with their previous work together, it would have been great. But anyway, yeah, as I said, after Kevin Jarre was fired, uh, John Carpenter was slated to be. Well, actually, I don't even know if that's true that John Carpenter was thought of to be the director for this film before George P. Cosmatos was hired. And apparently, from reports that I've read on IMDb, um, supposedly Kurt Russell really directed the movie, and George P. Cosmatos was just a supervisor, just making sure that you know all the shots looked good and everything looked fine. Um, and and really, I want to just really quickly talk about the music, and then we'll get on to my rating for the film. So the composer for this film was Bruce Brutton, who I believe worked on previous films, including I believe The Young Sherlock Holmes and The Great Mouse Detective. And the score that he does for this film is absolutely fantastic. But the only problem with the score is it's nothing wrong with the actual music itself. It's just one of those soundtracks where it works great with the movie playing, but by itself, it's not easy listening kind of music. But in terms of the actual like listening to the score along with the movie, it's great. And even if you played um like tracks by themselves, granted they're not all together. It's not really easy listening, but the tracks are still fantastic. Um, I believe by the time this Blu-ray edition came out, um, yeah, it says that Uncharted Records did release a soundtrack release, which I believe might be still like the last time I checked, it did say it was out of stock, but it might be back. Actually, let me go and check that right now. Yeah, I just checked it right now, and it said that it's temporarily out of stock. You may be able to find it from secondhand sellers, and I believe it might be on digital download. I'm not sure, but um, if you personally like the score, don't pay too much for it. Um, but if you can find it, get it. I highly recommend it. Again, like I said, for me personally, it's not easy listening to music, but it's certainly a great soundtrack. Um, and so yeah, that's really it for this review. Um, this is a great western, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's trying to get into the western genre. I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. This film does have some problems, but overall, I think this is a great film in general. That I highly recommend to everyone. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I next week's episode will be the season 2 finale to Russell's movie reviews. Will it be the end of the? Would it be the end of the series? No, I still have. If I'm if I am going to end it, I do want to end it with at least 3 seasons. Um, so I do have another season of this coming out, planning out. And I already got the season 3 premiere episode um in line. I'm already writing the script for it, uh, and stuff like that, which I will be hinting at the end of next week's episode. But really quickly, just to mention it, next week's episode will be My very first martial arts movie, which I'm surprised I haven't done a martial arts movie before. But grandly, it's probably just because I don't really have that many in my collection, even though it's one of my personal favorite genres. I do want to plan on picking up a lot more in the future. But anyway, my my season 2 finale will be my very first martial arts movie for the review series, and that will be Lionheart, starring Jean Claude Van Damme, directed by Sheldon Lettich, and released in 1990. Um, or in 1991 if you live in America, but for all intents and purposes, 1990. But anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this review, and stay tuned for next week where I'm going to be talking about Jean Claude Van Damme's Lionheart. Live long and prosper. Out.